We often carry within us a deep illusion, one that quietly guides our behavior without us even realizing it. It's the belief that if we don't chase anything, if we don't aim too high, if we stay still and avoid the risk of failure, then somehow we will be safe. Somehow we'll preserve peace. That illusion is deeply comforting because it lets us hide from the discomfort of effort. It tells us that inaction is neutral, that standing still is a form of stability, but it's a lie with massive consequences. There is no such thing as stillness in life. The world is in constant motion. Time doesn't pause because you've chosen not to act. In fact, time is the one force that never compromises. The moment you decide not to chase something meaningful, something demanding, something that forces you to grow, you don't get to simply stay where you are. You begin to deteriorate. Slowly, quietly, sometimes invisibly at first, you begin to lose sharpness, resilience, and vitality. It's not because you're being punished, it's because that's the natural law. If you don't stretch a muscle, it atrophies. If you don't speak truth, you become confused about what it even is. If you don't pursue something bigger than yourself, you become consumed by everything smaller than you. You see, life doesn't offer neutrality. It's not a machine you can pause. It's an ecosystem, constantly evolving. And in an evolving system, there's no standing still. You're either moving forward or you're regressing. The moment you stop intentionally growing, intentionally struggling, intentionally chasing, you begin to drift. And the current doesn't take you anywhere good. It pulls you toward apathy, regret, and internal chaos. There are people who confuse this process with peace. They tell themselves, I'm avoiding stress. I'm avoiding burnout. I'm choosing a simpler life. And perhaps in some cases that may be true. But for most, it's not simplicity they're choosing, it's escape. It's avoidance disguised as wisdom. It's comfort dressed up as philosophy. And deep down, they know it. Because when the lights go out at night and they're alone with themselves, they hear the whisper of their unrealized potential. They feel the growing weight of time passing and nothing meaningful changing. What they don't realize is that the longer you live in that state of avoidance, the harder it becomes to return. The further you drift from responsibility, the more foreign it starts to feel. You lose the habits of action. You lose the confidence that comes from striving. You become more fragile, more uncertain, more doubtful of your ability to even begin again. That's the decay I'm talking about. Not just physical decay, although that certainly comes too, but psychological decay, the erosion of your own belief in your power to act. So many people want peace, but they don't want to do the difficult thing that creates peace. And here's the brutal truth. Peace is not given. Peace is earned. Peace is what's on the other side of effort, courage, and persistence. It's what you feel when you've faced what you were afraid of, when you've struggled against your own limitations, and when you've come out, bruised, maybe, but intact and stronger. That's real peace. The fake peace, the kind you get from never moving, never daring, never striving, that's not peace. That's sedation. And sedation always leads to suffering in the long run. When you refuse to chase, you give up the very engine that makes life vibrant. It's not the destination that matters most, it's the movement. Chasing something forces you to learn, to sacrifice, to mature. It brings structure to your chaos. It organizes your soul. And when you take that out of your life, when you remove pursuit, you remove meaning. Without meaning, life becomes unbearable. And meaning is always linked to responsibility, to movement, to the pursuit of something valuable. So remember this, when you choose not to chase, you are not choosing peace, you are choosing to decay. Not all at once, not in some dramatic collapse, but in the small ways, the quiet resignation, the slowly fading confidence, the dullness of days that look the same, sound the same, and feel like nothing. It's a spiritual erosion, and the only cure is to begin again, to chase, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, because motion, not stillness, is what keeps you alive. There is a certain kind of suffering that cuts deeper than failure, deeper than loss, and even deeper than rejection. It's the suffering of knowing you could have done more. It's the pain of unrealized potential, of being haunted not by what happened, but by what didn't. And if you let that go on long enough, it doesn't just sit there quietly, it festers. It transforms into something far more dangerous, resentment. When you decide not to chase the things that matter to you, you might tell yourself you're being practical. You might say it's safer to not take the risk, not aim too high, not dream too boldly. But there's a quiet consequence to that kind of thinking. Every time you silence your desire to strive, every time you shrink from a challenge you know is calling your name, a little part of you remembers. It doesn't forget. It stores that unmet need somewhere deep inside. And over time, as the dreams you abandon start to look more and more like distant strangers, you begin to feel that tension between what is and what could have been. That tension doesn't stay neutral. It begins to turn bitter, and it's a slow process, almost invisible at first. You start to look at others who are chasing things, maybe even succeeding at them, and instead of feeling inspired, you feel irritated. You tell yourself they're lucky or privileged or have it easier than you did. You begin to construct explanations for why they got ahead and you didn't. And those explanations always have one thing in common. They protect you from the truth. They keep you from having to confront the fact that maybe, just maybe, you gave up on yourself too soon. That maybe you let fear make your decisions. That maybe you had more in you, but you buried it. That's where resentment lives, in the gap between your potential and your choices. It's a toxic emotion, but it has an origin story rooted in pain, not evil. Resentment is often the signal that you've betrayed your own capabilities. It's your soul crying out for the life you refuse to build. And unless you acknowledge it, unless you confront that uncomfortable truth, it starts to twist your perception. You begin to resent not only others, but life itself. Everything starts to feel unfair. You feel like you've been wronged by the world, but you don't know exactly how or why. And so you become angry. Not the kind of anger that leads to change, the kind that leads to bitterness, sarcasm, apathy, and self-sabotage. That kind of resentment doesn't just poison your view of the world, it poisons your relationships, your work, your self-worth. It turns you into someone who believes that effort is pointless and that dreams are for fools. But the truth is, that belief system is a defense mechanism. It's a psychological shelter built to protect you from the regret of not having tried. Because if you admit that you could have done more, then you're forced to confront the painful fact that you didn't. And that confrontation is hard. But it's also the beginning of healing. Because once you see that resentment is born from potential denied, not potential lacking, you reclaim a kind of power. You realize that the pain you've been carrying isn't because you weren't good enough, it's because you were more than good enough, and you turned your back on it. That realization can crush you, or it can wake you up. It can remind you that the best way to silence resentment is not to suppress it, but to prove it wrong, to get up and chase again, to look your past choices in the eye and say, no more. Because you're not dead yet, you're still breathing, and if you're breathing, you still have a chance to realign your actions with your potential. And make no mistake, the chase doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to lead to the outcome you once imagined. What matters is that you begin to live like your effort means something again, that you move toward what matters, that you replace envy with discipline, regret with momentum, and bitterness with boldness. Because in the end, resentment is not proof that others have taken what should have been yours. It's proof that you still want it. And that desire isn't weakness. It's the clearest sign that your potential is still alive, waiting not to be wished for, but to be claimed. Every day, in ways big and small, you are making a choice, whether you're conscious of it or not. You are either shaping your life with deliberate intent, or you are allowing your life to be shaped by external forces beyond your control. There is no middle ground. When you refuse to chase what matters to you, when you step back from striving, you're not simply waiting or resting. You're handing over the pen that writes your story. And make no mistake, someone or something will pick it up. Life doesn't just leave blank pages when you stop acting. It fills them in with what's easiest, most convenient, and most passive. It lets the world make decisions for you. It lets circumstance define you. And soon, without even realizing it, you're no longer the author of your own life. You become a character being written by the expectations of others, the limitations of your environment, and the demands of systems that were never built with your dreams in mind. The most dangerous thing about refusing to chase your goals is not the loss of the goal itself, it's the loss of agency. You begin to believe that your circumstances are more powerful than your choices, and over time, that belief becomes a prison. You tell yourself you're stuck because of your background, your past, your finances, your age, your responsibilities. And yes, those things do shape the difficulty of the road ahead, but they do not have the right to dictate whether or not you take the first step. Only you decide that. But when you give up the pursuit, you stop deciding at all. And it's not just external forces that take over. Internal patterns begin to solidify. Every time you avoid action, every time you say not now, or it's too late, or it won't work, you reinforce a mindset of helplessness. You start to train yourself to believe that your desires don't matter, that your dreams are unrealistic, that wanting more is somehow wrong or selfish. Slowly your standards shrink, your confidence erodes. You stop asking, what could I become? And start settling for, what's the least painful way to get by? But here's the uncomfortable truth. Someone else will make use of you if you don't make use of yourself. That's the harsh reality of the world. If you don't step up and define your values, your goals, and your direction, then others will gladly assign them to you. You'll work for someone else's vision. You'll be pulled into someone else's crisis. You'll sacrifice your time, your energy, and your life in service of things that don't align with your heart. And eventually you'll wonder where all the time went, why life feels so hollow, so disconnected, so off. It's not because you didn't have the chance. It's because when the moment came to act, you stepped back. And that's what abdication is. It's not laziness. It's not stupidity. It's the gradual surrender of your power to choose. It's the moment you say, let life decide, instead of saying, let me decide who I'm going to be in this life. And here's what makes it even worse. You may still look successful. You might have a job, a routine, a social circle. You might even receive praise for how stable or reliable you are. But deep down, you'll know you're not living your life. You're living the default version of it. The version that happened because you didn't resist. And inside that quiet knowledge grows something darker. Regret. But here's the hopeful side of all this. It's not permanent. That pen, the one you handed over when you stopped chasing, it's still within reach. You can reclaim it. The moment you take responsibility for your choices again, even in the smallest way, you begin to rewrite the script. You begin to push back against the drift of circumstance. And every intentional step you take toward learning, toward risk, toward growth, is a rejection of passivity. It won't be easy, it won't be perfect, but it will be yours. And there is something deeply redemptive, deeply meaningful about building a life that reflects your deepest values, rather than accepting one built from convenience or fear. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for permission. Life will keep writing with or without you. The question is, are you ready to take the pen back? Discipline is often misunderstood. People think of it as a kind of punishment, a restriction, a chain around the neck of freedom. They see it as something harsh, rigid, something reserved for athletes, soldiers, or overly intense personalities. But that's not what discipline truly is. Discipline is not a luxury for the few who want to be great. It's not a lifestyle accessory. It's not a personality trait. Discipline is a lifeline. It is the structure that keeps your life from descending into chaos. It is the mechanism through which you preserve dignity, direction, and strength in a world that is constantly trying to pull you off course. You cannot live well without discipline. You can exist, yes. You can drift through days and weeks, reacting to whatever happens, coping as best you can, but you won't thrive. You won't build anything meaningful, because nothing of real value, whether it's physical health, emotional stability, deep relationships, or purposeful work, comes without sustained, focused effort. And effort, by its nature, demands structure. It demands consistency. It demands self-regulation. That's discipline. When you refuse to chase your goals or refuse to commit to anything that stretches you, what you're really doing is turning your back on the process that makes you competent. And without competence, you don't get confidence, and you certainly don't get freedom. That's the irony. People avoid discipline because they think it restricts them. But the truth is, the absence of discipline is what really makes you a prisoner. A prisoner of your impulses, your moods, your distractions, your fears. Discipline is what gives you power over those things. It's the tool that allows you to say, no, I don't need to give in right now, or yes, I will keep going even when it's hard. Without that tool, you become a servant to whatever feels urgent or easy in the moment. And feelings, for all their importance, are unreliable guides. Some days you'll feel motivated. Some days you'll feel tired. Some days you'll feel inspired, clear, focused. Other days you'll feel doubt, laziness, or despair. If your life is governed by how you feel at any given moment, your progress will always be unstable. You'll stop and start, rise and fall, and wonder why nothing sticks. Discipline is what builds the bridge between how you feel now and what you want long term. It's what keeps you going when your emotions shift and your vision blurs. Think about it. Every version of you that you admire, every possibility you see in your own future that inspires respect, is on the other side of discipline. It's not talent alone. It's not luck. It's not waiting for the right time. It's you. Waking up and doing the thing you said you would do. Whether that's writing 1 page a day, lifting the weight, studying the chapter, showing up for the meeting, saying no to what distracts you. Small actions done consistently are how great lives are built. And those actions only happen when discipline becomes non-negotiable. But let's be honest, discipline isn't glamorous. It's repetitive, it's inconvenient, sometimes it feels like it's not working. But this is where so many people give up. They expect immediate results, and when they don't see them, they lose faith. But discipline is not about results today. It's about identity. Every time you follow through on a promise you've made to yourself, You are teaching your mind to trust you. You are wiring your brain to believe, I am someone who follows through. I am someone who does hard things. I am someone who finishes what I start. That belief, once established, is one of the most powerful forces in the world. The truth is, no one comes to rescue you from a life without discipline. If you don't build structure into your life, the world will impose one on you. Deadlines, penalties, emergencies, these will become your you will react to chaos instead of creating order. And that's exhausting. That's where burnout comes from. Not from discipline, but from the anxiety of living without it. So if you're waiting until you feel ready to be disciplined, stop. You won't always feel ready. But that's the point. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you want to become. And then it demands that you act in alignment with that vision day after day without apology. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. In the end, discipline isn't something you do to punish yourself. It's something you do to protect yourself from regret, from chaos, from weakness. It is the foundation for self-respect, resilience, and real peace. It's not a luxury. It's your lifeline. Grab hold of it and don't let go. Comfort is seductive. It offers warmth, safety, and ease. It whispers that you've done enough, that you've earned the right to rest, that growth is optional now. And while comfort in its rightful place can be restorative, there is a darker side to it, one that creeps in slowly, silently. It begins as a deserved pause, but if left unchecked, it becomes a trap. And over time, what once felt like peace reveals itself to be decay. That's the hidden danger of comfort. It doesn't strike like a storm. It dissolves like rust. Quietly, gradually, relentlessly. When you stop chasing, when you step away from the pursuit of something meaningful and demanding, comfort begins to take the lead. It feels good at first. More time, fewer responsibilities, less pressure. But that feeling is deceptive, because the human spirit is not built to live in idle luxury. We are wired for challenge. We are meant to overcome, to strive, to grow. Without that pressure, we don't relax. We deteriorate. Not in a dramatic or visible way at first, but deep within. Our edge dulls, our ambition fades, our curiosity weakens, and we begin to settle, not out of wisdom, but out of fear, disguised as contentment. Comfort tells you there's no need to push any harder, no need to take risks, no need to ask more of yourself. But that is the voice of stagnation. That is the beginning of a slow internal death, the death of your potential, the death of your courage, the death of the version of you that could have been. The longer you remain in that state, the harder it becomes to leave. Your capacity shrinks. Your tolerance for discomfort diminishes. And before you know it, the idea of doing something hard, something uncertain, something ambitious starts to feel impossible. Not because it is, but because comfort has made you fragile. And fragility is not a state of weakness you are born into. It's the result of a life built around avoiding effort. You don't become strong by accident. You become strong by choosing discomfort repeatedly and voluntarily. And the longer you avoid that choice, the more your internal strength withers. You might not notice it until something breaks, until life hits you unexpectedly, and you realize you're no longer prepared to face it. And so, something breaks until life hits you unexpectedly, and you realize you're no longer prepared to face it. Comfort may protect you from struggle in the short term, but it also strips away your armor. You need to understand that true fulfillment does not live inside the boundaries of comfort. Fulfillment is born in progress. It comes from knowing that you are moving forward, growing in skill, in strength, in character. It comes from confronting the difficult thing and choosing to face it anyway. And yes, that path is uncomfortable. It will ask things of you. It will demand effort, time, sacrifice. But it will also give you something comfort never can: pride. Not the cheap kind that comes from appearance or status, the real kind. The kind that comes from knowing you earned the person you've become. That kind of pride, that sense of earned self-respect, only comes from friction, from climbing when you'd rather sit, from standing when it would be easier to fold, from doing the thing you said you'd do, especially when no one's watching. Comfort has no memory. It never says thank you, but effort does. It shapes you. It rewards you with identity, with clarity, with power. We all say we want happiness, but the truth is what we really want is meaning. And meaning never comes from ease. It comes from challenge, from responsibility, from chasing something that's worth failing for. That is the paradox of comfort. The more you seek it, the more you feel restless. And the more you seek challenge, the more peace you eventually find. Not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger. So be careful when you hear the voice that tells you to stay where you are, to rest just a little longer, to play it safe. That voice may sound kind, but if it keeps you from stepping forward, it is not your friend. It is the architect of a life half lived. And you were not made for that. You were made to move, to grow, to fight for something that matters. Don't let the slow death of comfort rob you of that. Reject the illusion of safety that comes from stillness. Chase, struggle, rise. Because in discomfort, you don't just find progress, you find yourself. There is a truth that we don't hear often enough, especially in a world so obsessed with convenience, comfort, and ease. Your soul is not looking for a vacation. It is looking for a burden worthy of carrying. You may try to escape that reality. You may seek a life of freedom from responsibility, from pressure, from weight. But in doing so, you are not liberating yourself. You are starving something deep inside you. Because whether you realize it or not, your soul demands to carry something heavy. Not because suffering is noble for its own sake, but because meaning only emerges when you willingly take on the responsibility for something larger than yourself. People often think that the goal is to avoid weight. They imagine that happiness lies in being free from duty, free from stress, free from expectation. But that's an illusion. What happens when you remove all weight from your life, when you have nothing pressing against you, nothing demanding your strength, is that you begin to feel unanchored. At first, it may feel like relief, but slowly it becomes disorientation. You start to feel aimless, adrift, directionless. And then, without realizing why, you begin to feel empty. That emptiness doesn't come from a lack of pleasure. It comes from a lack of purpose. And purpose is not found in ease. It is forged in the fire of responsibility. When you voluntarily choose to carry a burden, when you decide that something in your life is worth struggling for, you begin to feel your own strength rising in response. The weight doesn't break you, it shapes you. It gives you something solid to push against, something that reveals to you who you are and what you're capable of. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to take on the world in one day, but you need something you will commit to, something you will serve, something you will lift, even when it's difficult, even when it's thankless. That could be your family, your craft, your health, your faith, your principles, your community. Whatever it is, it has to be real. It has to be important enough that you're willing to suffer for it. And because if it's not worth suffering for, it's not worth living for either. Avoiding burden doesn't make life easier. It makes it shallower. And people who try to live without burden often end up carrying a different kind of weight the weight of regret, the weight of unfulfilled potential, the weight of knowing they chose the easy path not because it was right, but because it was safe. That kind of weight is far heavier than the burden of responsibility, because at least when you struggle under something meaningful, your pain has a direction. But when you suffer without meaning, that pain turns inward and becomes despair. When you refuse to chase what matters, when you step away from your potential, you don't escape the load, you just trade it for one that weakens instead of strengthens you. You become like a tree without tension in its roots. It may look fine in the moment, but the first real storm will show you what's missing. You need resistance. You need struggle. Because only in carrying something difficult do you grow the internal muscles, discipline, resilience, humility, character, that give life its weight and its richness. This is why you see people who have every external advantage still feel lost. It's not because they lack comfort or success. It's because they lack a burden that demands the best of them. They lack something that draws them forward, calls them higher, and forces them to wrestle with their limitations. And until you have that in your life, no amount of entertainment, distraction, or surface-level success will fill the hole. So instead of asking, how can I make my life easier? Ask, what burden am I willing to carry? What responsibility can I adopt that will make me stronger, wiser, more grounded? What can I dedicate myself to so fully that I'm willing to endure pain for it, sacrifice for it, grow for it? Because it is in that commitment, not in escape, that you will find your identity. And more than that, you'll find your peace. You are not here just to float. You are here to build, to serve, to shoulder something with dignity. And when you do that, when you choose your burden instead of running from it, you'll find that it doesn't crush you. It elevates you. It makes you a protector, a builder, a guide, not just for yourself, but for others. And that is where meaning lives. That is where your soul comes alive.